South Africa have won the Rugby Championship for the first time since 2019 and their first full edition of the competition since the old Tri-Nations in 2009. In this video, you are going to get a front row seat as I break down how the Boks achieved this. We'll look at the stats, some fun facts, and I'll analyze the way that the Boks put together this monumental performance. I've also got some video clips for you, and I'll deliver a final report card for you on this Rugby Championship, as well as look ahead to what we can expect on the end-of-year tour when the Springboks visit Britain. But let's start by looking at the results from this year's Rugby Championship for the Springboks. It started off beautifully by hammering Australia 33-7 in Brisbane. That was followed by a good 30-12 victory against the Wallabies, that one also taking place down under, but this time in Perth in very wet conditions. Rassie Erasmus made several changes for that fixture. Next up was a beautiful 31-27 come-from-behind win over the All Blacks at Ellis Park. A week later we beat New Zealand 18-12, this time in Cape Town, and that meant 4 wins from 4, and the championship was virtually wrapped up, but there was a little bump in the road when we lost 29-28 in Argentina. But a week later, we set things right by hammering Los Pumas 48-7 in Nelspruit. Let's discuss some of our star performers now in the Rugby Championship. I mean, you could pretty much talk about all of the players that were used during the competition, but I want to start with Eben. I feel like that is a very apt place to begin. A star player for the Springboks. He's a giant of a player and has been for more than a decade, and very, very special performance in Nelspruit where he ran out onto the field before his teammates. Why did he do that? Because it was his 128th test cap. In case you didn't know, what's special about that? It means that he has played for the Springboks more times than any other player. Victor Matfield was the man who held the record previously. Now, we can't talk about Eben if we don't talk about his partner in the locks. And you know what? We used several lock combinations through this tournament, and the reason is because we had something of an injury crisis. You could go all the way back to the beginning of the year. Loet de Jager, Argeus Snyman. There's been problems in that area. Soos comes to mind, Franco Mostert. But one man who put his hand up when given the opportunity for me was Ruan Nortje. I feel that this man not only put his hand up, but said, hey, you know what, coach? You need to take me to Australia in 2027. And I was very, very impressed by the work done by Ruan. Was he perfect throughout the competition? No, he wasn't. But talk about a steady performer and a man who I feel, out of all of the players who were given opportunities, apart maybe from Sacha, Feinberg and Ngomezulu, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, I think apart from that, Ruan Nortje was the man who certainly said, coach, I need to be part of this box setup. Pieter-Steph du Toit, the best player in the world as far as I'm concerned. This man isn't human. I swear he is a robot. What a tournament he had, and just look at this try. Jasper Wisse is another man who I feel just keeps getting better and better. I won't lie to you, when he first came into the side, I wasn't overly convinced. I thought, okay, I can see that this guy is good, but he just gets a little bit better, and I feel like it's a snowball effect to the point where now this man is just solid for the Springboks, and I have become a bit of a fan, I must be honest. Well, if we say that Jasper is as strong as an ox, well, why don't we talk about Ox Nche? What a colossus this man has become. The best loose head in the world? I think so. And he is just a machine in those scrums for us up front, winning so many scrum penalties. What a performer Ox Nche has been for South Africa. Let's also mention our captain, Siya Kolisi. Captain, fantastic if you ask me. He had a very good tournament as well. Don't forget that nose injury that he suffered against New Zealand in the first test match between the two at Ellis Park. Well, he just kept playing, didn't he? Because he had to be there to lift the trophy at the end. And you know what? I won't lie to you. His nose doesn't look that bad to me. Certainly not like Kwagga Smith, who, by the way, let me just tell you, in my opinion, is the best player in the world coming off the bench. I promised that we would talk a little bit about Feinberg and Ngomezulu. What an announcement this young man has made. It started at the beginning of the year when he came off the bench against Wales at Twickenham in the Qatar Airways Cup, and then he booted that 60-metre penalty just because he can. What confidence that showed. Now, I know that he performed well in the Rugby Championship, maybe not so well in Perth, but he did perform well against the All Blacks and that first test against the Wallabies. And I think that there were a lot of people who had some disparaging things to say when they found out that he had hidden an injury from coach Rassie Erasmus during that New Zealand mini-series. Now, let me just say this. Imagine you are 22, you've just come into the Springbok side, you've made a very good start to your Bok career, you're playing against the All Blacks, you've got a little bit of a niggle, but you reckon you can play through it. What would you do in that situation? And I tell you what, I reckon 99% of us would have done exactly the same thing that Sacha did. Does that make it right? No, it doesn't. Are there other players who in the past have hidden injuries from the coaches? Yes, there are. Most notably, Joost van der Westhuizen in 1999, he played the Rugby World Cup semi-final against Australia with damaged knee ligaments. He shouldn't have been playing that match. And you know what? We lost on that occasion. Would any of us blame Joost for the defeat? No, we wouldn't. We were just glad that he was there. So I think that, yes, it's unfair to at this stage put Sacha in the same bracket as a man like Joost, but I'm just giving you that as an example. And again, the exuberance of youth, no doubt he's maybe a little overzealous. I don't blame him for the decision he took, and I know that Rassie would have sat down with him. There would have been a heart-to-heart conversation, and Feinberg Mngomezulu will learn from this. And you know what? Maybe he's already learned the hard way, because from what I'm hearing, his injury is of such a nature that he won't make it on the end-of-year tour. So now look what has happened. Sacha will learn from this experience, I have no doubt, and he is going to go on and be an absolute superstar for the Springboks. Speaking of superstars, well, Damian Dialende may be a man who doesn't always get the credit he deserves. He was at his wrecking ball best during this Rugby Championship, if you ask me. Cheslin Kolbe was simply brilliant. And I would also like to make a mention here of Aphelele Fassi. I know a lot of people were unhappy with him after that defeat to Argentina in Santiago del Estero. But you know what? Fassi, and I've told you this before in one of my previous videos, he is a man who in 2021 I earmarked as a successor to Willie Leroux. Since then, we've seen Damian Willemse take over that role in magnificent fashion. And I have no doubt that DW will be our #1 fullback, provided he is fit, in Australia in 2027. But Fassi now is the man who holds the second place jersey. I think Willie Leroux, they're going to try and get him to 100 test matches and then maybe cut the cord at that point. We'll see what happens. But I think Fassi put his hand up during this competition to say, hey, you know what, coach? I'm your man. Maybe not as well as Ruan Nortje did at lock, but I think Fassi has definitely put his hand up, and we are going to see a lot more of him in that Springbok jersey. And just look at this. To say that this is extraordinary would be something of an understatement. Have you ever seen such a thing? Just brilliant. I also want to talk a little bit about Manie Pollard. He showed what he can do, especially in that last match against Los Pumas. He was heavily criticized after what happened in Santiago del Estero, but when the burden of goal kicking was taken away from him, he showed his class. Okay, let's take a look now at some very interesting statistics from a team as well as individual perspective. You would expect New Zealand to lead the way when it comes to carries, but South Africa not far behind there, 756 playing 730. South Africa, as it turns out, leads the way when it comes to clean breaks with 50. You would have thought that the All Blacks would be ahead of us, but the Kiwis, 45, not far behind, but nevertheless we were ahead of them. Argentina 34, Australia just the 26. But what I really like is the individual tally. Jesse Creel, top of the charts with 8. Kurtley Arendse in joint second place with 7, Cheslin Kolbe in joint fourth place with 6, and then Aphelele Fassi in 6th spot with 5. That means that we have 4 players in the top 6 for clean breaks. That's almost unheard of for the Springboks. Now that's a look at the attack. Let's talk a little bit about the defense and talk about defenders beaten. New Zealand leading the way overall here with 165. The Boks in second place with 139. Argentina 124. Australia at the bottom with 120. Individually, Kolbe leads the way. He is the best when it comes to beating defenders, having done it 21 times. How about meters gained? You'd think New Zealand would also lead the way on this front, but think again. South Africa, top of the charts with 3,053 meters. The All Blacks second, 2,703, followed by Argentina with 2,423, and then again the Wallabies last with 2,176. We certainly saw more offloads than ever before from the Boks, but maybe our eyes were deceiving us and it wasn't maybe as prolific as we thought. Bearing in mind that a pass is not necessarily an offload. So here you can see the Kiwis in first place with 54. Then it's Argentina with 40. We're down in third place with 26. That's half of what New Zealand did. And Australia with 24. I don't think that we necessarily would have thought that. But what we would think is that we were dominant in the scrums. But were we really? New Zealand winning 91% of their scrums, Argentina and Australia with 87% each, and then South Africa down at 79%. I must admit that this is a very surprising statistic, and I do wonder if SANZAR / the Rugby Championship have actually updated these statistics, before whatever matches it may actually be. But okay, fine, let's take them at face value. I certainly don't think that our eyes would have thought that when watching these matches, but then there's also that old adage, lies, damn lies, statistics. I mean, look at this. We did very well in the scrums despite that statistic, and but for Jasper Visser here not quite being able to control it, this would have been a try. You might say we were too dominant that time. Now, a commonly held view throughout this tournament was that our line-out wasn't always functioning as best it can. Certainly that's what our eyes were telling us, but maybe this tells a different story. New Zealand had the most success in the line-outs, 88.8% won. We were second, look at us, 86.9%. That's hardly what you would call problematic, and I want to show you what the boys did individually. Ruan Nortje leading the way with 32. There he is again. Eben, he's in the top 3 with 24 takes. Now look, obviously things like that can be determined by how many jumpers you were using, whether you were going short or whether you were going long, because Argentina did a lot of that. Even we went long quite a few times, and then obviously that might disrupt the statistics. So it can be a little bit lopsided, but take a look at this. This is one of the most memorable moments throughout the Rugby Championship for me. It led to a try against the Wallabies, and what beautiful innovation. Now, mauling from a line-out is something that we did very well. Here you can see Bongi Mbonambi taking full advantage.
Springboks packing in around it, Mbonambi with the breakaway.
And Malcolm Marx helped himself to a couple of tries from such moves. Beautiful to see.
20th test try, a 5th against New Zealand.
The bomb squad was as effective as ever, and I particularly enjoyed the moment when New Zealand coach Scott Robertson decided to drop Beauden Barrett to the bench. It was almost as if he was saying, okay, you guys have the bomb squad, we're going to try and do something similar. But something that maybe Robertson doesn't quite understand is that the whole point of the bomb squad is that you're sending on, effectively, a fresh pack of forwards. So sending on a brand new fullback, that's not really what the bomb squad is about. Maybe we might say Scotty doesn't know. But what I will say is that the decision to drop Barrett to the bench is perhaps the ultimate form of flattery. Now, in the loose, we weren't always at our best. I think it's fair to say that at the breakdown, against New Zealand especially, we were second best. But again, I'm not saying that our eyes were deceiving us, because that's certainly not the case. But the statistics might show here that it's not as bad as what we might be thinking. Rucks won. As you can see, there's absolutely nothing in it between the 4 teams in the Rugby Championship this year. Now, I know that perhaps one of the reasons that we weren't doing as well in the loose was because I think we were committing fewer men to the rucks, and I think that had a lot to do with the new Tonyball approach. The Springboks trying to be more innovative, more creative, more attacking, and so that meant that fewer men were committed at ruck time, and I think that that might have had something to do with it. But the reason that I wanted to show you that statistic was just to prove that, not that our eyes were necessarily deceiving us, but that perhaps it's not as bad as what we maybe necessarily thought it was. I guess I'm just trying to show you that when we actually had possession, we were actually doing just as well as everybody else in this tournament. Now, in terms of percentage of tackles won, we were last. I bet you didn't think that was going to be the case. Although, again, there's very little in it. And I'll say this, it's a stat that can be manipulated quite easily because, for example, if I miss a tackle in my opponent's 22, it's unlikely to be as significant as missing a tackle in my own 22. Now, I mentioned Tonyball a little bit earlier, the approach brought about from our new attacking coach, Tony Brown. Some of it was absolutely wonderful to see. I know we didn't always get it right, but I do think we were getting better and better by the test match, and there were some beautiful moments that we saw from our back line. The men in the back looked dangerous pretty much every time the ball was made available. And I also want to make a special mention of our comeback win over the All Blacks. How many times over the years have we led against them only for them to score a couple of tries at the end to beat us? Well, at Ellis Park, the shoe was on the other foot and I just loved it. Now, we've spoken a little bit about Manie Pollard earlier. He had a wonderful tournament. I love the way that he redeemed himself in the eyes of the fans, certainly the critics at Nelspruit when he was relieved of the kicking duties. But one of the arguments made against someone like Manie Pollard is that he cannot do the same things that Manie does. Well, is that accurate? It looks like Pollard has been asked to be more innovative, and just look at this bit of creativity that led to a Jesse Creel try. As they say, when you gain in one area, perhaps you lose in another area. I'm not convinced that we've lost too much, maybe defensively, but let's have a look at the final standings for this year's Rugby Championship. As you can see, we had the best attack and the best defence. We scored more points and tries than anyone else, and we also conceded fewer points and tries than anyone else. You have to be happy with that. Now, in terms of areas where I think we can improve, for me, the number one, not the breakdown, but the number one area actually is handling errors. And I accept that this Tonyball approach is not traditionally the way that the Boks play. I grant you that. And perhaps with us trying to be more innovative, more creative, more attacking, inevitably there are going to be more handling errors. But I would like to see us now cut down on those. I think at one point we were averaging 7 or 8 per match. That's way too many. Now imagine if you can get that down to 3 or 4. What kind of damage might the Springboks do to Argentina, Australia and New Zealand? And let's not forget our friends England, Ireland, France, Scotland, Wales and Italy up north. A reliable goal kicker is also an area where I feel that we're not quite where we want to be. Sacha and Pollard were indeed that, but in the event that they were not around, we were a little bit short on options. That said, when I watch this team, I really do see a lot of extremely positive things. But as I say, I do see areas where the Springboks can improve. And quite frankly, I think that is something that is very, very scary for our opponents. When we get it right, it's going to be a bad, bad day at the office for whoever we are playing that day. Further to that, Rassie didn't actually select the same match day 23 for any of the Rugby Championship matches consecutively. The rotation of the squad meant that we played 4 different lock combinations in the 6 matches. And yes, I know there were quite a lot of injuries at lock, as we discussed earlier. We also played 5 different halfback combinations across the 6 matches. Something interesting I want to show you as well is the disciplinary numbers. Now, we've all laughed at New Zealand for their inability to keep all their players on the field in the last 20 minutes, but just take a look at this. We received the same number of yellow cards as the All Blacks. I think the biggest difference is that if you go down to 14 men, between minute 20 and 30 for argument's sake, it's unlikely to have the same impact as going down to 14 or even 13 men in the last 10 or 15 minutes, because that is, as they call it in boxing, the championship rounds. And that's when you need to have all 15 players on the park, and the All Blacks have not been able to do that. And then they wonder why they lose. Rugby World Cup final, Rugby Championship, so many times in this Rugby Championship they received, it felt like an obligatory yellow card in the last 20 minutes. And that's why they're not winning. Of course, you could also say that maybe one of the reasons they're not winning is because they thought it was a good idea to boost their bench with backline players. But that's a separate story. But back on the issue of New Zealand and ill discipline. When you're down to 14 in the closing stages, as I mentioned, you are always going to be in trouble. Now, Argentina's excellent discipline was what helped them have their best ever Rugby Championship, and but for an unnecessary defeat to the Wallabies, they would have finished second this year. That would have been incredible. As for the Boks, I see us improving. I see us becoming more dangerous, more lethal, more clinical. And as I said a little bit earlier, that is bad news for our end-of-year tour opponents. We're playing Scotland first, then we face Wales and England in between, actually. And I think we're not only going to win all three, but one of those three, if not more, is going to be on the wrong end of a hiding, a proper hiding. But this video is all about the Rugby Championship, so let me say that I want to congratulate all of our Springbok heroes, as well as Coach Dr. Rassie Erasmus for putting this squad together, growing the squad, growing depth, and as I say, it's going to be very scary come Australia 2027. I, for one, am very excited. I'd love to know how you feel and what your take is on the way that we played in this Rugby Championship. You can let me know in the comment section down below what your assessment is. And if you're still watching, I have to assume that you've enjoyed this video. So I'm going to ask you if you would like to make a small donation to my channel. Now, if you look down there somewhere, you'll see a heart with a $sign inside of it. If you don't see it, there's a button with 3 little dots, and if you click on that, you will see the heart with the $sign inside of it. That is the super thanks button. What that does is allows you to make a highlighted comment on this video. I promise to hit the heart button on your comment and I will reply. You will have a guaranteed reply, and then it will invite you to make a small donation to the channel. It can be $1, which is about 15 to 17 Rand. These days I know the Rand is not what it once was. You can make a donation $1, $5, $10, $1 million if you like. I won't stop you. Why do I want you to do this? Because I want to go to Australia in 2027 and cover the Rugby World Cup for you at that tournament down under, and I'm going to give you daily videos, daily content from Australia, but I need a little bit of funding to make it happen, so that's why I'm asking you to help me out. If you're not yet ready to throw some money my way, what you can do is just hit that like button. In fact, don't hit the like button, don't press the like button, croc roll the like button. That's the way we do it here on Front Row Rugby. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And since you're still here, I've got a plethora of other videos that I would invite you to go and watch and enjoy. For example, the Springboks won the old Tri-Nations in 1998, also beating the All Blacks and the Wallabies in both matches. Our coach on that occasion was Nick Mallett. I did a wonderful interview with Nick. You can watch that. It's over here. And I also did an interview with Frans Steyn. He was the Springbok, or in the Springbok team, the last time we won the Rugby Championship back in 2019. His video is over here. Pick one and enjoy it, and I will see you next time.